Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dr. Stephen Grinstead. I was invited by the More Than Lupus Foundation to present a day-long workshop for people suffering with chronic pain. You don't have to have lupus. Any of the other invisible illnesses or any chronic pain condition would make you eligible for free registration. The catch is our space is limited and we're filling up fast. So this is more of a call to action that if you want to join me on May 11th in Portland, Oregon for this exciting and dynamic one-day journey where you'll learn some great new tools on how to pull yourself out of suffering in that chronic pain trance, don't hesitate. You'll find links along with this video to where you can learn more or actually register for free right away. But please, please, please don't hesitate because again, we only have a few slots left and I want to make sure that you join me on this exciting day. Today on this presentation, I'm going to cover a few of the highlights. A lot of times when I talk about suffering, people really don't understand what I mean. And as I was looking through some of my spiritual topics, I found a story of the poison arrow that was attributed to the Buddha. And the story goes like this. One of Buddha's followers was an impatient sort that wanted the answers and needed to have all the details, wanted to really understand everything in order to be taking action. And the Buddha told him the following story. He said there was this man who got shot with a poison arrow, and his family tried to get him to go to the doctor to get the wound taken care of and get fixed, but the man said, no, first I have to understand what kind of arrow was it? What was the material of the head of the arrow? What was the arrow shaft made of? What were the feathers made of? Then I have to know what the intentions were of the person that shot this arrow at me. He had all these questions about what he needed. He was so engrossed in the why, he forgot about the what. And the what was he was dying. And while he was waiting to get all these answers, he died. The lesson is, life is short. It must not be spent in endless speculation that doesn't bring us closer to the truth. So a lot of people with chronic pain are really focused on, why did this happen to me? Why did I have this? What's going on with this? Why do I need to? And the real question is, what do I need to do right here, right now, to stop the suffering? And the premise here is suffering is a component of people living with chronic pain if it's not adequately addressed. There's a lot of obstacles that get in our way. I've also been living with chronic pain for a long time, almost 40 years. And I know how important it was for me to overcome a lot of these obstacles. A lot of them are my own self-defeating reactions. The biggest and number one offender here that can set people up is when we become passive recipients of healing rather than active participants. We go to somebody and they want them to fix it, and we want to be fixed. We want to find the right cure, the right pill, the right shot, the right surgery, the right procedure, the right practitioner, and we want them to fix us. Another one is we get into a theme of malicious compliance to please or manipulate our caregivers. And I found this true for me when I was using alcohol and pain pills to help manage physical pain. And I could really convince people that I'll do anything, but I never did. All I wanted was the biomedical approach, the pills, the shots, and procedures. And if that was what I needed to do to get it, I'll do anything I have to. And then what tended to happen after my major injury, I moved into what I call a chronic pain trance. It was a hopeless, helpless state of mind that impacted my thinking, my emotions, and my behaviors. And we'll talk about the chronic pain trance too. There's a lot of grief and loss and shame and guilt for people suffering with chronic pain. And this needs to be identified and addressed. And we'll talk about what it takes to go through a healing process here also. Depression and other coexisting disorders will sabotage us if they're not being adequately addressed. And I'll cover some of the 4 or 5 of the more common ones that people live with when they're living with a chronic pain or chronic illness. There's a lot of treatment resistance and denial and self-sabotage about what it takes to get out of the problem into the solution. We'll talk about that. And a lot of times, a lot of people get into power struggles with their treatment providers, and much like the man that got shot with the poison arrows, they just want to go in and say, why, and not go to where do I want to go and how am I going to get there. The other big obstacles I see that can sabotage ongoing healing once we get into a healthy healing process is not having an adequate relapse prevention plan that includes a pain flare-up plan, positive proactivity pacing, and also improving our levels of functioning biologically, psychologically, socially, and spiritually. A big one, though, is trying to do it alone or becoming isolated and not having appropriate accountability partners, coaches, and guides that can support us on our journey. We have to do it ourselves, but we should never try to do it alone. And a big part of the morning, the early session, is going to be looking at pain in a lot of different ways because it's important to understand our pain in order to achieve freedom from suffering. These are some of the areas that we're going to cover in depth: the difference between acute and chronic pain, recurrent acute pain, which is pain flare-ups, the anticipatory pain reaction, neuropathic pain. Many people will be experiencing these symptoms. And like I said, we'll talk about the chronic pain trance, and most importantly, how we can make peace with our pain and learn from it. When we look at effective pain management, we'll be looking at several areas, the biopsychosocial spiritual areas. We'll look at the importance of the biomedical interventions. I'm not saying we don't use those, but we can't be only using those. We need to supplement it with psychological, emotional, clinical processes, dealing with ways to change our beliefs, perceptions, manage our emotions, make better decisions about our behaviors, and most importantly, involve other people on the journey. We need to look at non-medication based flare-up approaches when we have a flare-up, instead of just reaching for oral pain medication. We need to have an ongoing family and social support in place. And finally, implementing our unlimited potential of spirituality. And I'll explain the difference between religion and spirituality because I'm not talking about religion here. We'll talk about a really important thing about the chronic pain trance and how we get in that. What happens when you live with pain a lot, your stress levels go up, you start developing muscle tension, you start bracing up for it, and that's on the physiological side, the physical or biological side. Psychologically, we have a lot of intense emotional reactions like anger, fear, anxiety, depression. And this acts like an amplifier and leads to an increased or intensified perception of our pain. We must break the cycle. So we'll be talking how to break the cycle. And some of the ways we'll talk about doing that is we need to learn about stress and relaxation. So relaxation and acceptance for stress, bring our stress levels down, learn and practice some relaxation response. We'll talk about a stress thermometer, you'll create your own. And then CBT and DBT, cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy for the psychological emotional components. And I'll put that in a real simple to understand way, because when we're doing all that, it leads to a much decreased perception of living with pain. And the big thing is the healing part for most people is going to be explore the difference between pain and suffering. and realizing that pain is that physical symptom that tells us something's wrong. We need our pain. Pain can be our friend. But suffering is when that gets altered, when it gets distorted, when it gets amplified. And instead of ouch, this hurts, it becomes horrible, awful, terrible, agonizing. The big line here is pain's inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Suffering is optional. We can learn to choose differently. And I believe that freedom from suffering is both a right and a responsibility. A big part of learning to heal is practicing good activity pacing. So we'll talk about this, how to measure your activities, set a new limit, stick to that limit, and increase your goals or your limits gradually. So I'm going to cover all this and so much more. It's going to be an exciting day, but the big thing is, remember that if you want to come, you need to register soon because the space is filling up. It's in Portland, Oregon on May 11th, and you'll find links for all the information along with this video that you can learn more, or most importantly, sign up now before all the slots are gone. I'm going to have a team working with me for these experiential exercises. We're going to have fun, we're going to laugh, we're going to cry, we're going to play. We're going to be able to find ways to develop our own personal path to freedom from suffering. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope I get to see you on May 11th in Portland, Oregon.